Man, have I been bamboozled this time. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Pragmatic Addict here. So before I start off the review, no, I am not using my new equipment. I figured that after doing this review, I'm going to take a good week off or so. Just kind of learn the ropes a little bit better, get used to it a little more. But talking about Skinamarink. So y'all know me. I don't shut the fuck up. You couldn't pay me to shut up. And especially talking about Skinamarink, a 100% horror film claiming to be the scariest movie in a decade, my most anticipated film of the entire year. You couldn't pay me to shut up about Skinamarink. And I saw it. Now I'm just gonna say this. Before seeing this movie, I was expecting me to come out of this theater and feel like Cartman from the fucking South Park movie, where he's all like, yeah, I saw the Terrence and Phillip movie, who wants to touch me? I said, who wants to fucking touch me? I thought I was gonna be like that. Yeah, I saw Skinamarink. Tell your sister about it. I was hearing a lot of things about this movie. I was hearing that this is basically if David Lynch directed Paranormal Activity, which at the time I was like, whatever the fuck that means. And now that I've seen the movie, I'm like, okay, fair. I was also hearing things like it was basically this age's Blair Witch Project. And I'm just gonna say, I know, I like the Blair Witch Project. I'm a big fan of that movie, but I know that is a very divisive movie. And I know there's a lot of people that don't like the Blair Witch Project that claim it is just nothing. It's just a bunch of people walking around getting stupid in the woods. Now, I like that movie. Trust me, I've seen some boring-ass films. And I'm just gonna tell you guys, if you're if you're part of the side that does not like Blair Witch Project, if you just think it's a bunch of boring-ass fucking nonsense, just filming nothing, people walking through the woods, wasting your time for 90 minutes, this movie's not gonna be for you. So I'm gonna take a break from, roasting this movie for a minute. Let's get into the actual review. So Skinamarink is the directorial debut from Canadian filmmaker Kyle Edward Ball. And again, you couldn't get me to shut up about this movie. I was very excited for it. The second that I heard about it, I've done what feels like a million videos where I've at least mentioned Skinamarink. Way back when I saw Christmas Bloody Christmas, and I saw the trailer for this film for the first time, and ever since then, I haven't really slept well because I've just been waiting to see this fucking movie. And I just gotta say, there was a part of me that was like, well, I kind of want to go into this movie as blind as possible, but equally wanted to know as much going into it, which I will say this, upon research a couple of weeks back, I found out that Kyle Edward Ball had actually written a short film called Heck, which this is actually an expansion to. This serves as an epilogue or a little sequel, full-length sequel or some shit, an expansion to that short film. And I was actually saying that I really wanted to check out that short film, maybe do a reaction for Skinamarink, but I'm just gonna say it. I don't plan on ever watching Heck after this. So this movie, again, it was getting a lot of buzz. It completely obliterated Fantasia Fest. People were saying that it's one of the most shocking, most horrifying movie experiences of, in fucking years. It was getting 100%. It was one of those movies that was saying it was again, the scariest movie in years, that this movie is going to shake you to your core. You've never seen anything like it. Nightmare City, all aboard. Which reminds me, I've been meaning to slow down on the hype of movies that feel like that, that have 100%, that say things like this. But as a horror fan, it's kind of hard to not get excited for a movie like that, especially with a trailer like this. But I'm just gonna say it. You done it. You pushed me to the edge. You pushed me too far. So what the premise of this movie reads is that two young siblings, a brother and a sister, around the age of 4, Kevin and Kaylee, wake up in the middle of the night to find their parents missing and to discover that all the doors and the windows in the house have vanished. That's not what I gathered from the movie. What I would say for the plot, which feels more accurate, is that two kids wake up in the middle of the night. Everything is upside down. They start hearing voices, start hearing noises. They can't find their mom and dad, and there's something going on with televisions. I know that sounds very vague, but the movie itself is very vague. And another thing that interests me about this movie upon seeing it was that Kyle Edward Ball, the director, was saying that basically the movie's aim was to remind adults what it's like to be afraid of the dark. This movie does have some scary things to it, and it is, centered around more or less a night. I'm going to be very vague with a lot of this stuff because this is a movie that I'm not going to say it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it is definitely one that you definitely have to see multiple times. But in saying that, I don't really plan on seeing this again. But yes, essentially these two young siblings wake up in the middle of the night. They can't find their mom and dad, and they start wandering around the house. They start hearing, weird noises. There's this entity or some shit that's kind of talking to them. It's got creepy shit in it. This is a movie that, I'm not gonna say it scared me, but if someone came out of this movie and said, yeah, that was kind of freaky, I'd be like, okay, yeah, there was some moments here and there. But going back to what I was hearing, how this is kind of like a Paranormal Activity movie if it was directed by David Lynch, I do agree with that. This is a movie that is set up in the format like Paranormal Activity. You're seeing a lot of surveillance footage and stuff from cameras, and there's times where you're wondering, is this from someone's point of view, or whose point of view is it? And then there's times where you're like, okay, this definitely is someone's point of view. And then there's times where you're just looking at a fucking wall or a goddamn toilet for a few minutes. Again, this feels like it did borrow a lot of inspiration from Paranormal Activity. And in the beginning, I'm not even going to say it in the beginning, just throughout the movie, you feel like there's something bigger. You feel something more sinister, more dreadful, more experimental. This is a very silent film, which is what I was hearing very early on. And I will say, there's a lot of the time, majority of the time, where, again, this does just center around, for the most part, two young siblings around the age of 4. And the only dialogue you're really hearing, if any, is usually out of their mouth, which you can't really understand. So there is, most of the time, subtitles, which I did notice that some of the subtitles were even wrong with this movie. But going back to the dialogue, I will say that, when the dialogue is used, it is selective to a degree that I do think is good. Whenever the dialogue is on screen, there's always something that you're interested about. And while there wasn't a lot to me that actually happened on screen as far as what I was expecting or hoping for, no matter what, you always feel like something is coming. And that's what I want to say, is that this movie is not very long. It's 99 minutes or so, and it does feel fucking long, and it is a slow movie. It is also very repetitive, but you always feel, and I do think that this is a lot, this has a lot to do with the directing of Kyle Edward Ball, but you always feel like no matter what's going on or how long it's been silent or how bored or disappointed you may feel with the movie overall, you always get that vibe that you are in a horror story. Something wrong is definitely going on. And I will say that this movie, it does have a story, but it's not very precise with what it's telling. And you get that feeling where it's what you're seeing on screen and what you're hearing in the, whether it's some of the dialogue or the noises that you're hearing. But I will say that the movie probably offers the most is theories. I mean, you watch this movie, you definitely know that there is a concept behind it. There is a premise and there is a story. It is one of those movies where I think that it's going to take a lot of multiple viewings to start putting things together even remotely, or maybe start find puzzle pieces to actually figure out what this actual movie is about. But honestly, if you want my opinion, I feel like this is a movie that you could just watch and just make up a story while you're watching the movie. That's what I feel like this movie's gonna offer the most, is theories. There's definitely a lot of different ways that you could not only look at what's going on or what the story is, or anything like that, but whose point of views you're actually getting and which character it's actually centering on at a certain time. Because this movie is, again, it's a very selective film with what it's showing on screen, with how it, uses its dialogue. Whenever someone's talking, it's always something that's you feel like it's answering or asking a question that is very vague. Whenever you hear something, it's a very indistinct, noise from the distance that could be really a number of things. And whenever you get these noises, whenever you hear them, you know that there is something that is not good because of, certain tones or certain characters' reactions. Again, this movie is definitely a horror story, and there's definitely a story at play, but the movie is just it tries its best to be very selective and very vague with everything and every little speck of, of this movie. And again, you can definitely see the inspiration of Paranormal Activity when you're watching this film. But the difference between Paranormal Activity and this film is that you don't know what is being filmed. You don't know what you're seeing the movie from it, whether it's, some surveillance footage, someone's point of view, and whose point of view that is, if it is a point of view. It seems like this movie used a lot of tools to make a successful horror film. It has a really good atmosphere. Characters, I would say, are pretty creepy to a, fair extent. There is a lot of creepy dialogue, and it is very selective with, everything it uses, from dialogue to noises to scenery. But as far as connecting that in a way that you feel is rewarding or even feels like an actual cohesive story, you're not really getting that, in my opinion, with this movie. Again, I feel like the biggest thing that this movie is going to sell is the experimental horror factor of it. This definitely feels like a movie that is supposed to be subliminal, supposed to be very underground, very vague, and, just something where, again, the biggest thing it's going to offer is theories. It's not really, you definitely get that feeling that it's telling a story, but it's really just that feeling. Again, this is something that you can definitely see that the maker wanted audience to be divided. He definitely wanted people to view this movie multiple times and, put things together, but while you see that, you don't really feel like you want to go out of your way to give that, because the movie, it just doesn't offer much, especially as a first-time viewing, which is the most important. Yeah, I was feeling really mixed on this movie. Again, this is a scary movie. There are scary things that, happen. There is some creepy imagery, creepy noises, some dialogue that, makes you're always interested in this movie, whether it's, for better or for worse, because, again, with it being an experimental horror film, in a fair sense, on a positive note, with this being a directorial debut, with it being an experimental horror film, you never really know with this type of movie, especially with its layout, what you're going to get next. So you keep being hopeful and you keep, wanting to stick it out for your money's worth, or, just because you want to actually see what you're fully getting. And it just never seems like it's fully delivering. It never feels like it's giving a full story. It never seems like it's giving the fullest of, its potential. It's got all these, useful tools, but it's just kind of scattering them around. And again, for a movie that feels like, and this is the funniest part, is like, for a movie that feels like it was made with only $15,000, that still feels a little excessive for this movie. But yes, guys, that is going to do it for my review of Skinamarink. Let me know what you guys thought about this movie, if you guys do see it. This is an extremely divisive movie. Early reviews for it were crushing it. It was like critically acclaimed, but now that it's out to the public, it is dropping significantly. So I would love to know everybody's opinions, what everybody thought of it, what everybody's, theorizing about this movie. I would just like to know. This is a movie I'm interested in, and if I could know more, I would like to, but I just don't see myself going out of my way to view this movie again. But yes, guys, that is going to do it for my review of Skinamarink. Let me know what you guys thought about the video down below, as well as the movie. Take care, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good night.